Go for it.
Welcome to this episode of In Search of Songwriters and Serial. I'm Trustin.
I'm Jake.
And we've got the great pleasure today to be visiting with songwriter, guitarist to John Prine, Mr. Jason Wilber. Thanks, Jason, for being part of the show today.
My pleasure.
Might just ask you the main reason you're in town today here in Springfield.
Yeah, we're playing a show tonight in town, we being John Prine's band. So.
At Juanita K. Hammond's Performing Arts Center.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Should be fun.
It must be satisfying for you and the band members to see John this late in his career receiving all the accolades and just how the last couple of years have gone for him.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I mean, John's, I think to make, his record Tree of Forgiveness came out last year, and I think to make a record that good after such a long, during such a long career, I mean, he's made so many good records throughout his career, and to come out with that one at this point is pretty incredible to me.
Yeah.
I think it's as good as any of the other classic John Prine records, Missing Years or...
And it got Americana Album of the Year, I believe
it did,
was,
yeah.
And Song of the Year.
Yep, that's true.
So, and then he recently got inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame, so that's that was an honor well deserved for a lot of us thought.
Yeah, I agree.
Last night we had the good fortune of Jake and I of getting to watch you perform in a small, intimate venue at a local mansion here in town.
Right. Much to your credit for setting up the
appreciate
show.
that.
Yeah, I
appreciate that.
How would you compare doing something like a smaller show like that last night to a festival or a bigger arena?
Right. It's not that different. I mean, obviously, there's a difference, when you're playing for 50 people versus 5,000 people. But it's not that different to me. I mean, it's sort of the same process. The thing that's different is you're relating a little bit more, at least for me, to the audience on a one-to-one level when there's a smaller group. Mm-hmm. You sort of actually are making eye contact with people, and then if you're on a bigger stage with a bigger crowd, they're just a little bit farther away. It tends to be, and so it's not really that different. I guess I would say it's like the difference between being at a small dinner or cocktail party and being at a big, a table with 20 people. I don't know. It's different, but it's not that different.
Yeah.
So, I think just one more comment. I think people often assume that you'll be more nervous if you're in front of a huge crowd than a small group, and actually, I find it to be just the reverse.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
It's a little more because you feel a little more on the spot when if there's 20 people and you can kind of have almost a one-to-one interaction with all of them. It's more. It feels more personal than if it's just a big mob of people, So anyway,
it was a great show last night. We sure appreciate you
thank
doing
you. Well,
that for
my
us.
pleasure.
So,
my pleasure.
we hope you might come back and do something like that in the future.
Sure, I hope so too.
Rolling Stone magazine recently named you as one of the top 20 artists to watch. I understand, and a lot of it's off your new album, Reaction Time.
Right.
From song 1 through 10, from Reaction Time down to Heaven, which is a duet with Iris DeMent. This is just a really solid record. I had a chance to listen to it.
I appreciate that.
There are two songs on this that are a couple of my favorites. See if I can get that to balance there. When the Good Old Days Are Gone, and I'd Love Another Saturday Night. Of course, Another Saturday Night, I think most people can relate to that. You're working, it's Monday, it's Tuesday.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like, when is the weekend going to get here?
Yeah.
And and then when it's over, it's like Wish There Was Another Saturday Night. Can you
Right.
kind of explain to us the inspiration, how that song came about?
Yeah, well, I think it's funny. We go through our lives on this sort of template that is set up, and we all experience it, together from birth.
Yeah.
From when as soon as you're old enough to be aware of the world. There's days of the week, and we're all kind of marching through this repeating cycle. And I think it's interesting what the days of the week mean in our lives. We have our routines, and for most people the weekend is like the time when they don't have to work. And it just always, for many of us, I think it seems too short. Of course my whole life has been the reverse, in that the weekends are usually when I'm most likely to work. So that part is different, but it's just sort of having some fun with that. That cycle we all go through every week of working, but looking forward to the time when you can relax. But then a lot of times, and I think a lot of us who enjoy our work, when you're relaxing, you're also kind of like, well, I'm ready to get back to work.
When the Good Old Days Are Gone. That song's got just kind of an ancient feel to it, and a theme of loyalty and battle, and it talks about legends living on. And how'd the inspiration for that come about? That song to me seems like it could fit in a movie real well.
Oh, thanks. Well, I hope there's some movie producer or director who will share your feelings. I think I can't remember exactly the exact time I got the idea for the song or anything, but generally it was sort of trying to draw a little bit of a metaphor between, we have all these stories we read, whether it's, fantasy books or mythology or whatever, sort of stories from the past and modern days too. I mean, there's, obviously there's still wars and battles and heroism, and so those sort of end up being kind of archetypes and metaphors that we think about and really connect with people. And what's interesting about all those stories is that the reason they resonate with people is not so much because of the story itself, but because you imagine yourself in that story. You can identify with it in some way. And so I think with that song, I was just I was thinking about how all of our lives are. We're all on that hero's journey. As Joseph Campbell put it. And even though our trials and our revelations and challenges aren't on as an epic scale as maybe Greek myths or anything like that, they're still what's important in our lives. And so I was just thinking about that, how we're all going through these struggles and all the things we do, and then eventually you're gone, and it's over, and there's maybe something left behind of you.
In terms of the whole album, how did it flow for you, and just the making of it, and the selection songs and all that?
Yeah, well, the way I usually do song selection for albums is I try to come up with a batch, like it's maybe twice the number of songs I'm going to need. Whatever I think my best or current favorite songs I've written or have in mind for the record. And then what I find is that as you go through the process of playing them for the producer and working on them on your own to come up with an arrangement and the key you want to sing it in and tempo and all things like that, some of the songs, a lot of times what happens is a song that I thought, oh, that's going to be one of the really good ones. At the beginning, by the end of the process, maybe that's just an okay one, and one of the ones you hadn't really thought about turns out to be one of the really good ones. So it's nice to have, start with more than you need, and then sort of cut out the weak ones. And then that kind of gives you a stronger batch. And also, sometimes I'll have a song that's good, but it doesn't seem to fit with the other songs for whatever reason.
Kind of the theme of it.
Yeah, and so that's kind of the way I approach it. I try not to. I try to be open to how the process evolves. Because I think one of the most important things about creativity, any kind of creative pursuit, in my opinion, is that being open to things changing. And really noticing, wow, this is something that's really working. I think that's really one of the keys to recording is
The
that,
creative process kind of takes its own.
yeah, is to pay attention to what's happening. And sometimes you, you get a really good take on something, and maybe it's slightly different than what you had in your head, but it's better.
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
I would agree with that too. Just from like painting and drawing and all that
Yeah.
same thing. If you're like, you do have to have a little bit of open-mindedness to that, and even I think just coming up with ideas probably a lot too, because I think that's a really kind of abstract concept at the beginning, probably for you thinking of. I was gonna ask too. Do you usually come up with a theme for your album first thing, or do you kind of make the songs and then the theme kind of comes at the end?
Yeah, this the second one, I would
Uh-huh.
say. Yeah, it's just being open to that, seeing how things unfold, and I think collaboration is part of that too.
Yeah.
You know, when you're working with someone else, you have your ideas of how something will go, and then maybe someone else brings in an idea that is different than what you had in mind. But if you're open to it, a lot of
Yeah.
times it's better, or
a
it
whole
gives
new
you
element.
another idea.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's great to, and that's actually one of my favorite parts of the whole process
Yeah.
is things happening that I hadn't even thought of.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Do you?
Go
Oh,
ahead.
okay. Do you have times that you, many times where you feel kind of like writer's block, or you're sitting down, you got this album, you need to work on, and then you just sit down and have nothing? And if so, how do you work through that?
Well, it's an interesting question. I have experienced that to some degree in the past, but the approach I take now is that rather than saying, "Oh, I'm going to make this record, I'm going to sit down and write a song," I just sort of wait till the songs come to me.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I have spent time where I said, "Okay, I'm going to sit down every day at this time, and I'm
Try
going
to
to
write,
spend
yeah.
2 hours. I'm going to write songs." And I found over time that usually the songs I write in that process kind of suck. They're they could be okay. I mean,
Yeah.
you can craft a song. You can pound it into shape and follow all the rules and make it into something. But for me, those are usually the songs that end up being kind of lifeless. And the ones that are good are the ones that just pop into my head when I'm doing something else, or when I'm asleep in bed at night, or when I'm practicing the guitar, a couple chords will kind of strike me in a way. I'll go, "Oh, that's might be something there."
Yeah.
So I try to just be more open to it as kind of an organic, subconscious process than something that I'm going to enforce my will.
Yeah.
Try to control it, and it doesn't come out the way you want.
Yeah, because it seems like all the really great stuff is the stuff that just comes from who knows where.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like how last night you were talking about, I think it was a song you wrote in London, maybe, that one, and you said that you had this song, and it was years ago before you would have had like an iPhone or something right down, and you literally had to hum the song in your head all day.
All day, yeah. I kept thinking, "Oh, I'm going to forget this." Yeah.
And then you said you would also, you would call yourself and leave voicemails, and you would sing the song to yourself to remember it.
Yeah, a lot of people used to do that.
Yeah.
You just call your own phone number from any phone and
We're going back a few
leave
years.
yourself a voicemail and in fact I there were times when I was co-writing with people and they go, "Okay, now we got one. I'm going to call my voicemail and let's record it." It's kind of a good system, really.
Do you do like voice notes on your phone now? Or iPad, or just
all the time. Yeah, that's probably I used to have, for years, I had a cassette tape recorder that I had on my desk at home where I wrote, and I would just always have a tape in there, and so I could always hit record and play my ideas. And then you have to try to write on the tape and keep track. I've got like boxes of tapes with who knows what on them, But now I just use the voice recorder on my phone mainly, or I have one on my laptop that's same thing, and those are great because you can just make a little snippet, you can give it a name, you can put them in folders together, So I usually record the snippets, and then I usually write out longhand or type it into a document, and then I can just throw those all in the same folder, and then I keep a folder with songs, So it's great because then it makes it so much easier to organize stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Do you ever go way back into those archives to find inspiration for your new album?
Nah, a little bit. Sometimes I don't usually go through the tapes, but I will go back. I also keep notebooks that I label with the time period. So they usually last a few months. They're just plain old pads of paper.
Yeah.
And I just keep a bunch of those in a cabinet, and so sometimes when I'm thinking about songs, like either I'll remember a song I've worked on in the past,
Right.
and then I'll start filing back through trying to remember when it was, or sometimes if I'm sort of working on stuff, I'll just randomly look back through notebooks, because I'm always surprised that I'll find a whole song that's done. It's all verses and choruses written out that I don't remember at all.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I mean, I'll kind of remember once I start reading it, but it's not one that I would ever been able to come up with. It's just so. I mean, I think for me at least, a lot of times I write tons and tons of stuff. And there's only a little part of it that ends up being good or usable or something that I like.
In terms of this CD, obviously those 10 songs made the cut. Is there a particularly favorite song on the CD, or one that maybe stands out as something that was uniquely?
It's hard to say because they're all kind of like my babies. I really worked hard on all of them.
Hate to show favoritism, maybe.
I mean. I'm going to look at this just to see if there's one that jumps out at me. I mean, it's funny. I like different songs for different reasons.
Right.
Like, I really liked When These Good Old Days Are Gone, just because I like the whole... I love story, Lord of the Rings and all those kind of epic tales. Right. And so I like sort of dipping into that world of mythology and big stories and relating it to normal life. So I like that. I like Teenage Idol a lot for a couple reasons. I used a kind of a device, which is not something I went into it thinking, I'm going to do this, but it worked out that, like sometimes in a movie where the opening of the movie is they show you almost the end, right, of the movie, and then it starts to go through the story of how it got there. And so that, that song, Teenage Idol, opens and closes with the same verse. And I don't know, there's something about that I liked, that sort of set up the end, this ending of the story, and then went back and told the story to the
Seems
end.
to be so fitting, too, I mean, those of us that kind of watch the music world or entertainment world, and you see the young teenagers kind of thrown right into the spotlight.
It's funny, people have this idea of how great it would be to be famous, and it's really a monster. I mean, it's really it devours a lot of people in a very bad way. It's just one of those funny ironies of life that people look at something from the outside and think how great it is. But people on the inside are thinking just the opposite, And a lot of times people work really hard to get to something because they have an idea of what it is, and then once they get there, they're like, "This is nothing like what I thought it was."
Right.
So anyway,
and the media loves to do that. To put them on a pedestal and then chop them down.
It's true, and that there's a whole. It's really funny that there's a whole. I mean, the media as an industry, like that's their fuel. Is all this stuff that isn't necessarily real. It's like
and sad in a lot of ways.
It is
in so many ways.
So anyway.
Any new projects you have coming up, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, I'm in the process of finishing up a record called Time Traveler. That's going to be out probably beginning of next year. It's a little more. It's kind of hard to describe, I guess, but it's sort of like the presentation of the songs is not really old-timey, but it's pretty acoustic-y, just mostly acoustic guitar and some vocals and maybe a little mandolin and bass, and I had violin and cello on a couple songs.
Nice.
And so it's sort of the maybe more traditional type instrumentation and arrangements, but the subject matter is more kind of about the world we're in now with computers and the internet and maybe the future too, and so hence the Time Traveler name, So that I'm putting out that. I'm also putting out a short EP now, which is actually some tracks that I recorded around the same time as Reaction Time. And those were some of the songs that kind of they made the first cut in that we recorded them, but then when I was putting together the record, they didn't really seem to fit in. So, but I still really like the recordings, and so those are coming out on a 4-song EP called Honeybee.
Oh,
so, nice. So I have two new projects coming out very soon.
Well, we were hoping you might be able to do a song for us before we close out.
Sure.
Would that be all right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But before we do, though, we
Okay.
have one last question to ask you that we ask all our guests, and it's really, I think, maybe the most important question that we ask. I'm going to let Jake ask it.
What's your favorite cereal?
Boy, my favorite cereal. You know, this is the tough one because I don't eat that much cereal anymore. But I guess it would be, believe it or not, Raisin Bran.
Oh, okay.
I know that's boring.
I like Raisin Bran.
And I like the Raisin Bran before they started coating it all in sugar. It was just the raisin, the bran, because raisins are sweet enough, you know.
Yeah, you may be in the minority there.
Yeah, I know. Well, obviously that's why they decided to douse the whole thing in sugar. But I stopped buying it after that. So.
Yeah.
No, nice.
Yeah.
Well, good deal. Well,
Awesome.
if you don't mind, we're going to have you do a song.
Yeah, absolutely. This is called When These Good Old Days Are Gone. In my green and slender season, with pride and ideology, I rode off with the rising sun for king and queen and country, and I fell into my quest when no path could be seen, and I smiled when fate cast me down into fear and uncertainty. Oh, I would be proud to meet you on the field in victory. I would be proud to meet you on the field in defeat. Wherever fortune carries me, I will rise to greet my destiny, and our legends will live on, even when these good old days are gone. All alone with our reflections, triumphs and regrets, the oaths that we have taken and all the battles we've seen, for a cause misunderstood at a price few would pay. Now the shadows are growing longer as the sun begins to melt away. Oh, I'm proud to meet you on the field of victory. I'm proud to meet you on the field in defeat. Wherever fortune carries me, I will rise to greet my destiny, and our legends will live on, even when these good old days are gone. See our banners waving high above the armor shining bright. Hear the thunder of the mighty host, feel the swiftness of our swords. When in time these towers crumble and the lands are falling dark, when this forest is overgrown and all our temples fade to gray, when this house no longer echoes with laughter and light, please recall that we fought bravely and tell all those who follow me. Oh, I would be proud to meet you on the field in victory. I would be proud to meet you on the field in defeat. Wherever fortune carries me, I will rise to greet my destiny, and our legends will live on, even when these good old days are gone. Yes, our legends will live on.
Nice.
Thanks.
That was awesome. Really good.
Thank you. Okay.
certainly hope that way. So
Yeah. So.
We're gonna, I'm gonna have to pause and move
Yeah.
her. Darling, get over here.
Cats
go
are
put her in the
so
bedroom.
good at
Go put her
picking
in
the
the bedroom.
one
Yeah, like the worst
thing,
place.
the one thing you don't want them to do. Like, that's what I'll do.
Go.
I don't know why I did that. Every now and then it just does that. You may want to just say the question thing.
I'm gonna just start that one again.
Okay.
And clap it.
Do you need more time, or are you ready?
No, I'm as ready as I'm gonna be.
Okay. Well, wait a minute. Okay, I was gonna go.
That could be, you don't want to mess up the cereal. It's like, have you ever seen Monty Python, The Holy Grail?
Uh-huh.
And you know the scene where he's saying, he's asking all those easy questions, the troll, to get over the bridge.
Oh, that's
What's
right.
your favorite color? Blue. I mean, yellow! Start off, right?
Yep.
You can do that with a cereal.
Yeah, you guys should have a seat that springs.
This is it.
That'd be good. Okay.